Welcome into Stacking the Box podcast with Matt Verderam and Sterling Holmes. I am Sterling Holmes. No Matt Verderam. That sound is everyone turning this off. I know. I'm sorry he's not here, but I'm joined by Liam McKeone. Liam, how are you?
I'm doing great, Sterling. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to fill in for Matt today. I know the viewers and the listeners will miss him greatly, but I'm going to do my best to keep everybody entertained.
Don't lie. An honor and a privilege. Come on. This is not the royal family. This is not a World Series game. It's a podcast. Come on.
Well, if I'm going to unseat him in the long term, I can't be that aggressive about it in my first appearance, okay? You got to butter him up a little bit first. So it's just the game. The game's the game.
Well, let's get into it. A lot to talk about today. First and foremost, yeah, I see you, Chris. No, Matt Verderam, I know, okay? We understand this. I understand. We tried hitting it early so you guys know. So you know. We're not lying to you guys. All right, Jalen Hurts. What do the Eagles look like without him? Supposed to miss a good chunk of time. Are the Eagles going to crumble, or can they stay afloat?
I think they could definitely stay afloat. I mean, their offensive line is really the strength of this team. We've seen how dangerous their rushing attack is. Hurts is obviously MVP candidate, outstanding. Doesn't seem like it's a long-term injury. They could lose the rest of their games and still probably end up with the number one overall seed and a bye going into the playoffs. You know, Gardner Minshew is a fine backup. I got some stats about the last time that he was a starter, 2020 with the Jaguars. He completed 66% of his passes for 2,259 yards, 16 TDs and 5 interceptions, and he was throwing to Laviska Shenault, Keelan Cole, and DJ Chark. So the guy has made do with some subpar weapons, and now he's rolling into an Eagles offense that features A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and the aforementioned excellent offensive line. I think everybody knows that the big person who needs to step up in order for the Eagles to survive this is Miles Sanders. He's hit the century mark twice in the last 5 games. He needs to do more if the Eagles are going to do this.
Yeah. The Eagles are very similar to the 49ers, which I want to get into in 1 second, is the quarterback's not the main focus point on this team. Everyone around Jalen Hurts is so incredibly talented. We've talked about it. Verderam and I have gone back and forth with the MVP candidacy when it comes to Jalen Hurts, Mahomes. As far as Mahomes, for example, is asked and tasked to do so much more with so much less. The Eagles' offensive line, defense, wide receiver core, Dallas Goedert should be back soon as well, which would be a massive boost as far as what Gardner Minshew could hopefully do. This Eagles team is going to be fine. They should be completely fine as long as Jalen Hurts is healthy for the playoffs. That is what really matters. As far as the 49ers go, are they the second best team in the NFC behind a healthy Eagles team?
Well, I think that comes down to your definition of best, but are you really picking anybody else in the NFC head-to-head against the Niners right now? I have a hard time talking myself into that. Their defense is obviously tremendous. 22 takeaways, tied for 4th in the NFL. The offense has not really missed a beat with Brock Purdy back there instead of Jimmy Garoppolo because Kyle Shanahan is just that good. He is that guy. Christian McCaffrey gives them obviously another extremely dangerous weapon in both the running and the passing game. It's hard to say that, you know, when a team is starting a 7th round rookie at quarterback, it is really hard to definitively say they are the second best team in the NFL. But the NFC is so weak this year that it's hard to imagine another quarterback going into their house and beating them in any circumstance.
We mentioned how good and talented the Eagles team is. The 49ers are the least reliant team I have ever seen on a quarterback. And this has been happening for a few years now. It's not just Jimmy G. They tried getting rid of Jimmy G before the season started for an unproven rookie in Trey Lance. Now, I'm extremely high on Trey Lance, but the point rings true. Jimmy G has been to a Super Bowl with this team, and they still said, you know what? No, we don't care. We'll go younger, we'll go cheaper, and we'll add the ability of a quarterback who can run the football. That's what's crazy. They don't even ask the quarterback to run typically. They are so unreliant on a quarterback. I don't think there's any drop-off from Jimmy G to Brock Purdy. If you want to make the argument that playoff experience, if that will come into play, I will listen to it. But as far as talent goes, I don't think there's any drop-off from Brock Purdy to Jimmy G. Hell, the Niners got production from Nick Mullins. They had Nick Mullins looking like a legitimate NFL quarterback for how many games? 6 games, something like that. The 49ers will be completely fine.
They definitely will. I think the point to make is that the Niners have a higher floor than any team in the NFC and maybe the NFL, because Kyle Shanahan's offensive system runs so well that, as you said, Nick Mullins could do this. Me or you could probably step in there and be okay as long as we don't get
Whoa.
I'm just saying, as long as we can stay upright, I think we could hit a couple of passes here and there. But seriously, Kyle Shanahan's offense is that good. The defense, I mean, you can't say enough about the defense. Even without any really big names at cornerback or in the secondary at large, they really, really just dominate. They impose their will on other teams, and especially in postseason football, defense wins championships, as we all know. The Niners know that. That's how they got to the Super Bowl with Jimmy G those few years ago. They are very good. I would like to put out a name for consideration to rival them as the second best team in the NFC. The Detroit Lions. Yep, I'm going there. I'm going to make that case. I'm going to make it, because the Lions are obviously the Lions. Karmically, reputationally, anecdotally, pick your poison. They are not going to do anything, but they have won 6 of their last 7 games. Their offense is legit. They're 4th in yards per game behind the Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles, 26 points per game. And they take care of the football. Only 14 turnovers on the year for that offense, which gives them the 6th best turnover differential in the NFL. The defense is obviously the great concern. I just mentioned that point about defense winning championships. This Lions defense is 3 years away from being a championship defense, if that. But during their 6-1 streak, the defense has forced 12 turnovers, only 1 game without a turnover, and they have improved tremendously from the first half of their season. They average 361 yards per game given up in the last 7. Their first half of the season, they gave up 421 yards per game. So these Lions are improving. Dan Campbell has devolved from being completely unhinged to only slightly unhinged, which I think is a very crucial differential. And really, I mean, the offense is so good that it's hard to, I think it's hard to make an argument for anybody else on the same level as the Niners right now.
It's wild that this is how bad the NFC is. A Jared Goff-led Lions team where Amon-Ra St. Brown is basically the only wide receiver weapon is, I don't know, the 3rd best team in the NFC. It's crazy, but I don't think you're wrong. And that's what's wild about this thing is I don't think you're wrong. The NFC as a whole is just so weak. Minnesota, who lost to Detroit, Minnesota at times looks like they are a contender in the NFC. At other times, they look like they're completely have zero idea what they're doing. I don't understand Minnesota. Kirk Cousins at noon is the only time that he's good. He realized it was a noon game halfway through this past weekend when they got down so much. He goes, oh, wait a minute. It's Saturday, but it's noon. I can be good again. Like, I don't understand them. The Dallas Cowboys have been inconsistent. We'll get into Dak Prescott later, so I don't want to dive too deep into this, but he's been inconsistent ever since coming back from injury. The NFC is just weak. It's just a weak division or weak conference. I'm with you when it comes to Detroit. Let's get into the NFC South. Does anyone want to win the NFC South?
The answer appears to be no. The sheer incompetence on display every week from each of these 4 teams is so diverse and so horrifying, and yet you just can't help but watch it. Nobody knows what the hell went wrong with the Bucs this year, man. Todd Bowles is not a very good head coach, but we saw what happened in the Bengals game. They're fumbling handoffs now. I mean, you have any idea what's going on there. The Falcons are starting Desmond Ridder. The Saints have Andy Dalton. The Panthers are doing whatever the Panthers are doing. I mean, it is a shockingly atrocious division, especially considering that going into 2022, all 4 teams were trying to be competitive. Nobody expected the Panthers to be competitive, but you can't deny that they were trying because Matt Rule was trying to save his job. The Falcons went with Marcus Mariota instead of their rookie quarterback. The Saints juggled Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton before settling on Dalton. Like, they tried really hard. Everybody tried really hard to be good, and they are terrible. We're looking at a 7-10 team potentially hosting a playoff game. It is astonishing. really simply because we came into the year and they weren't supposed to be this bad. We didn't think they were going to be very good, but we thought there would be, Bucks double-digit wins, run away with the division, Saints and Falcons make things interesting with the Panthers coming up in the basement, but all four are among the worst teams in the NFC. It is stunning.
All four teams have a negative point differential, which surprisingly, the Falcons at 5-9 have the best at only negative 27. I'm with you. The Saints, I thought, were going to be a decent team this year just based on what we saw from Jameis Winston in his small sample size back, right? We saw that. We thought Michael Thomas with Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, they might be a decent offense, just decent enough because their defense was supposed to be legitimately solid. They're not. They're not good. The Buccaneers, they're really not good. Tom Brady made that one miraculous comeback a few weeks ago in the fourth quarter where we're thinking, oh, all right. The Buccaneers are going to start rolling now. But there's so many injuries on the offensive line. The wide receivers, for as talented as they are, they've had many issues all season long, whether it's injuries or drops. Their defense is not good. The Buccaneers have been one of the biggest disappointments, and I'm with you. It also comes down to, it looks like the Jaguars made the right decision when it came to their head coach. Doug Pederson, I think, is doing a better job than we would have seen Byron Leftwich down there. Let's get into the future number one. Should the Giants re-sign Daniel Jones and or Saquon Barkley?
I am in on both of those guys. And really, it's about what the alternative is to me. Obviously, if the Giants sign Barkley to a massive contract, then that's a bad idea. But if they can get him for something reasonable or they franchise tag him, he is key to their success. They're 8-1 this year when he totals at least 70 yards rushing. Now, there isn't an obvious one-to-one there, but it's clear that the Giants offense runs best when Barkley is running, and next year should only get better with Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal both getting another year under their belts. When you have two monsters like that on the offensive line, the hole is only going to get bigger. And then Daniel Jones, the guy isn't going to go out there and win you a football game with all the odds stacked against him. But he's worked really well with Brian Dabble. He's really cut down on the turnovers, as we know. It's career high completion percentage, career low INT rate, second best TD percentage of his career, and only 7 turnovers on the year. None of that is outstanding, especially when you take into consideration that he's averaging 192 yards per game passing. But what's really the alternative here? The Giants are too good to end up with a shot at one of the top QB prospects in this year's draft. They'd have to trade up to even get someone like Will Levis. What are you going to do? You're going to go after somebody like Andy Dalton or ride the QB carousel that the Washington Commanders have ridden over the last few years. The Giants have watched that up close. I don't think they want that. And I think that there is really nothing to be lost. Well, they could trade a first for Gardner Minshew. Definitely. That's definitely an option. But I don't think there's nothing to be lost by signing Jones to, again, a reasonable deal and then just taking a couple shots in the middle rounds over the next couple of years and see what happens. Because I think the alternative is that you go for a guy whose ceiling is already very established, who's probably just as good as Jones is right now, and then you burn Jones without giving him a chance to grow it up.
Yeah. Let's start with Daniel Jones first. I think Daniel Jones has grown more than I expected. I didn't like a draft pick when he was early drafted by the Giants, but something he brings to the table is his legs. That's something not every quarterback has in the NFL. You mentioned the interceptions are way, way down. That's at least progress for Daniel Jones. And when it comes to some of the county numbers, they're not going to be great. Who's he throwing to? He's finally getting Richie James involved. He has Slayton back occasionally. He's missed a lot of games. They traded away Kadarius Toney. Kenny Golladay is getting major playing time, and Kenny Golladay looks washed. It's not like he has great weapons. So I do think Daniel Jones makes sense coming back. He's not going to break the bank. There's not going to be a massive bidding war for Danny Dimes. So it does make sense for him to come back. And again, I do think part of it comes from the relationship with Brian Daboll. I think he's a great head coach, obviously a great offensive mind. It's working right now, and it could grow even more. With Saquon Barkley, I'm going against what I always say. You never pay a running back. You never pay a running back. I've said this time and time again, but Saquon is, again, I always say, this guy's not different. Saquon is a little different. He's got through a lot of injuries already in his young career, but they've not hurt him this season. It's not like this year we're seeing those major injuries have slowed him down. He looks better than ever. And if you watch the game against Washington, how they were able to close it out, they knew they were running the football. Saquon was spinning his way, getting 11, 12 yards. It is a little different. He's also a good pass catcher, which is why he adds more value in my mind than Derrick Henry. Although I will say in Tennessee, they're finally starting to get Derrick Henry more involved in the pass game. But because Saquon can do so many different things, and you mentioned Neal, you mentioned Andrew Thomas, offensive lines coming together, I think it does make sense if you can get Saquon Barkley back, as long as it's not a Christian McCaffrey type of contract.
And I think that your points about the not paying a running back are all very well made, but I think the last couple of years have shown that the difference between a fine running back and a good running back can elevate an offense. It's not going to launch an offense into the stratosphere like it did back in the days of Adrian Peterson, but it does take a Giants offense that was bad last year and makes them average this year. And that's worth a certain amount of money. It's probably worth the franchise tag. It's not worth the Christian McCaffrey deal, but it's worth somewhere between those two things.
Especially if you're not paying Danny Dimes an obscene amount of money. Would a Tom Brady-Bill Belichick reunion make sense?
Full disclosure, am a lifelong Patriots fan, and I am here to tell you, no, it would not. It would be truly delightful for the nostalgia purposes, for my own personal fandom. It hurt my feelings when Tom Brady chose to leave. He owes me nothing, but it still hurt my feelings. Having him come back now, it's been a couple years, like we're kind of over the X a little bit. We have the new thing, and things are not working out well in New England, but there are reasons, in my opinion, mostly unrelated to Mac Jones, or at least partially unrelated to Mac Jones. But overall, I think it doesn't make any sense, because why would Brady sign up to come back to the Patriots when they are a total shit show right now? Like, complete. The Patriots are now the fumbling team that everybody laughs at after spending 20 years looking down on those teams. We have two failed head coaches in the two most important positions on the offensive coaching staff, and it is going horribly. This is the worst coached Patriots team maybe I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't even want to talk about what happened in the Raiders game. You're telling me Tom Brady's going to sign up to come back to do that? Really? He's going to sign up to come back to go play behind one of the NFL's lesser offensive lines, throwing to subpar skill position players. The only thing the Patriots have that Tom Brady likes is two tight ends, and we can't even figure out how to use them right now. I mean, it would be great. It would be fun. I would like it. I don't think it makes sense, and I'm not sure I want it.
When it comes to this situation, I don't see it happening. It seems like Brady would go to 49ers, if possible, a team that has a solidified offensive line and weapons. No, I don't think he goes back to New England. I will say they're 7-7, plus 31 point differential. They're not good, and the coaching has been an issue. There's not a lot of talent on that team. I don't know how bad the coaching has been when I went into this season, Verderam and myself, saying this is one of the worst rosters in the NFL. It's a really interesting scenario going on in New England. I see Panther Pickle in the chat said, I clicked on a link on Twitter that says, does anyone want to win the NFC South? And now you're getting Brady talk. We talked about it earlier. No one wants to win the NFC South, Panther Pickle. No one does. The Panthers are using Sam Darnold. They're trying, okay? They're trying. It was better. It was better than Baker Mayfield. I'll give you that. I'm rooting for the Panthers, okay? I don't want to see Tom Brady in the Buccaneers again. You serious? Tom Brady in the playoffs might just pull something out of his ass, and they shouldn't be in the playoffs. If you win 7 games and win your division, I'm sorry, you should not host a playoff game. That's asinine. It's stupid. I'm going off on a tangent here, but it irritates me. I'd much rather see the Detroit Lions play a game than whoever wins the NFC South. I'm sorry. But I will say, I respect the Panthers. I'm rooting for you. Let's get into the future, number 3. Should we be worried about Dak Prescott?
I see why people would argue we need to be worried about Dak Prescott. Yes, anyone is better than Baker. Tremendous point, Panther Pickle. Prescott has thrown a truly concerning amount of interceptions, 10 in since he came back from his injury, which is most in the NFL over that time span. He's thrown 2 interceptions in 3 of the last 4 games. Obviously, one was a backbreaker, the pick 6 against the Jaguars, another against the Texans very well could have been a backbreaker if they didn't decide to run Rex Burkhead at the goal line 3 times. Still, that replays over and over in my mind. I still can't get over that. But, I mean, I think it's hard to get blood worked up about this because the Cowboys have won 3 of the 4 games in this last month where he has been subpar. He has still thrown for 246 yards per game, 7.8 yards gained per pass attempt, which would be top 10 over the course of a season. There are a lot of other factors why the Cowboys lost that Jaguars game, most notably the defense giving up a cool 500 yards of offense. I think that Dak Prescott has not played very well. I think that Dak Prescott could play a lot better. And if he throws 3 interceptions or 2 interceptions in a playoff game, the Cowboys are going to be hard-pressed to win that game. But I just don't see any real reason to worry that he's not going to turn it around.
I would be worried. I would be worried. And the reason why is when they've needed Dak Prescott to step up, he's not. The games they've won has not been because of Dak Prescott. It hasn't been. He's never been an elite quarterback. I said he's probably anywhere from, at this point, 8 to 12. I'm probably more 11 to 12 best quarterback in the NFL. He's not stepped up when the team has needed him to. And that's what it comes down to. Things are great when they're running the football well with Zeke and Tony Pollard. They have a lot of weapons on that Cowboys team. There's weapons left, right, and center on that team. Dak Prescott needs to step up. Those interceptions cannot happen. If you're not going to be taking tons of shots, you can't be turning the ball over. You just can't. I would be very worried as far as the progression of Dak Prescott. I'm trying to figure out the games right here. The last 3 games, right? 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 3 touchdown, 1 pick. That was against the Indianapolis Colts. They blew the Colts out, but the Colts are a dumpster fire, right? I can't say much because they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, but still, they're horrible. And then 2-2 against the New York Giants. That's 7 interceptions in the last 4 games. Is that a franchise quarterback? I'm not saying interceptions is the end-all, be-all, but you mentioned the yards per game, the touchdowns they just went through. These aren't great teams they're going up against right now. I don't think Dak's that dude. He does not take him to the next level. The team's great, but Dak's not.
I think that's a fair point, but I do wonder, do they need him to be a franchise quarterback to win playoff games and win the Super Bowl? I'm not totally sure. I don't think so.
They're not the Niners. They're not the Eagles.
No, but I think he can be good enough. I think good enough is good enough, as it were. If he throws for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 picks, that's great. But they have CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard and Zeke to kind of cover for the mistakes when they happen. And then it's very iffy to rely on turnovers because of the variance that happens there. But the defense does have 2 elite playmakers who can change the game in the blink of an eye. If you're worried about Dak Prescott's status as a franchise quarterback, I completely agree with that. But if you're worried about the Cowboys' prospects this season because Dak is waffling between mediocre and franchise quarterback, then I'm not sure how much worry needs to be happening.
The last 3 games of the season are going to be a really good barometer for what they will do in the playoffs. 3 of their best teams will play in the Eagles, Tennessee, and Washington to end the year. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. I just am not a big Dak Prescott believer. I don't think he's bad, but I don't think the team around him is as good as the Eagles or as good as the Niners. And that's going to be the difference maker. He needs to do more than Brock Purdy. He needs to do more than a Jalen Hurts. He does. There's less talent around him. And if they face anyone in the AFC, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, Miami to an extent in the playoff game, I don't think it's going to be good, especially if they get down in a game. Let's get to into the future, number 4. Does Doug Pederson have a shot at Coach of the Year?
I think he has a shot if you consider a shot to be, any technical percentage of winning, but I don't think he has a real shot. The one thing working in his favor is that narratively speaking, the voters love stories like Doug Pederson. In the last 5 years, the award has gone to a coach in the first year with a franchise because the guy before them was terrible. Sean McVay, 2017 versus Jeff Fisher. Matt Nagy, 2018, replaced John Fox. Kevin Stefanski, 2019, replaced Freddie Kitchens. When the guy before you was terrible and you come in and you right the ship, the voters do love that. But on the flip side, if you look at the records of the last 5 coaches who have won this award, the minimum win requirement is 11 wins. The Jaguars, the best they're going to do is a 9-8 season. That might not even be good enough to make the playoffs, and that would be tremendous work given how bad the Jaguars were last year. But it doesn't blow anybody away. And then you compare him to everybody else he's going up against. You got Nick Sirianni. He'll finish with the best record in the NFL in his second season. Mike McDaniel, who I think perception-wise is being seen as doing more with he's being seen doing more with less because Tua was seen as a bust last year, whereas everybody knew Trevor Lawrence was great. Doug Pederson just made sure that he was great. Then you got Dan Campbell, obviously, turning the hapless Lions around, ripping off a huge win streak. I think that Pederson has a chance because, like you said, Urban Meyer obviously was atrocious. The Jaguars were so bad last year, and this year they are a respectable team and a respectable franchise, and that's, big in the eyes of the voters. But I think that the Jaguars just aren't winning enough for him to end up with the award.
In my opinion, he's top 3, easy for Coach of the Year. Again, just basing off how bad it was last season for the Jaguars. And by the way, Trevor Lawrence was bad last year too. It wasn't like Trevor Lawrence was like, oh, I'm playing well, I just have a bad head coach. Trevor Lawrence looked bad last year too. He makes Trevor Lawrence look good. Okay? I'm all in on Doug Pederson. They made the right choice. I think Doug Pederson got unfairly treated with the Philadelphia Eagles. I understand the Jalen Hurts situation. That was part of why he got canned. But he won a Super Bowl, and what was it, a year and a half later, he's out? That was asinine to me. So I'm glad Doug Pederson got another chance. He's top 3. You can make the case, as you mentioned, for Dan Campbell. Shanahan out there in San Fran deserves a lot of credit as well. But it has to be Nick Sirianni. It has to. The Eagles, again, I think Doug Pederson was treated unfairly, but they made the right choice. They did. Nick Sirianni is – what more can he do? What more can he do? I know folks like to point at the Eagles' schedule, right? Oh, it's easy. I will say the NFC East is much more difficult than folks thought. As a Chiefs fan, right? AFC West, not quite as good as one thought. It can be a little bit of both here. You can't determine who you're going to play week in and week out. You have to win. And they've won. So I think, to me, it's Nick Sirianni, a pretty large gap. And then I'd probably put Doug Pederson, especially if they end up winning their division. If the Jaguars win the AFC South, you're going to see a lot more Doug Pederson head coach of the year votes, in my opinion.
Well, I think that would change the conversation entirely, especially given where the Jaguars were, even just coming off their bye. To be able to rip off all these wins and end up with the division crown would be, it doesn't matter if he only has 9 wins instead of 11 or has that many fewer wins than Nick Sirianni. If he has the Jaguars get their first divisional crown since 2017, then that, I think, puts him in a neck and neck race with Nick Sirianni. But unless that happens, it's going to Sirianni, especially in the somewhat likely outcome that the Eagles don't completely collapse in their final 3 weeks. If they manage to keep the ship steady-ish with Gardner Minshew back there, if Hurts misses the rest of the regular season, then Nick Sirianni has it in the bag.
Do you think the Jaguars win that division? Right now, Tennessee is 7-7. Jacksonville is 6-8. Point differential, which again, I don't think point differential is the end all be all. I know I've actually brought this up a lot today, so I just want to preface this by saying it's not end all be all, right? You can blow a team out. It still only counts for 1 win. But I think over the course of a season, you can get at least some sort of baseline. Tennessee, negative 38 points differential. Jags +6. I will also say Tennessee's offense is really starting to grind to a halt for the most part. Derrick Henry, I think, had finally his first good game in how many weeks? 5? Would you be surprised if Jacksonville overtook Tennessee?
I would be a little surprised because Mike Vrabel has exhibited an ability again and again to win things he should have no business winning. Tennessee has no business winning the AFC South this year. Would I be surprised if Mike Vrabel pulled it off? No, I would not. But On the other hand, the Jaguars, I mean, the Jaguars have a better offense. Their defense is coming together. I think that I would, A, love it, but B, I would not be surprised if week 18 Titans Jaguars decided the division. I would not be surprised if that happened. And I think that that would be a hell of a game. But I do think that the Jaguars have a teensy bit of a tougher time to get to that point because they play the Jets on a short week this week, Thursday Night Football. And if they lose that game, they're already one game behind. It's going to be really tough for them.
All right, let's do it. Let's bring in Ben Heisler from BetSided. Ben, how are you?
What's happening, fellas? Liam, good to talk with you, man. It's been too long.
Yeah, just pretend I'm Matt for your section, just so everybody's comfortable.
No, you're far more even keeled. Like it might be difficult to be able to pull off.
Should I just act like I'm Verderem? Hey, Heist, what the fuck's going on? Just really blunt. Just really get into it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That was a much easier transition. I enjoyed it.
How did we do last week?
Another 3-2 week for us. So if we're looking at the overall records over the course of the show, we continue to have a really nice season. 31-19-1 in our show picks against the spread. Last week we had the Lions and the Jets under. Jets money line did not come through for us. Thanks so much to the Jets defense and Jared Goff for screwing that one up. We hit on the Cowboys and the Jaguars over. That was certainly way over the projected total of 46.5 or 47.5. Our teaser with the Patriots actually hit because we moved the Patriots from +1.5 to +7.5. Turns out that was substantial because the Patriots money line pick that Verderem, I believe, convinced all three of us to go into because it was you too?
Yeah, Verderem, by the way, he's not here, so I'm going to talk a little shit. He was so convinced that the Patriots were going to beat the Raiders. I go, well, Verderem's a smart guy. I'm throwing some good money on this one. Every single parlay. Let's boost it up.
Oh,
Throw
no.
the Pats in there. I trust you, Verderem. You make some good decisions here. No, not a good decision. This is why we only listen to you, Ben, because me and Verderem are dumbasses.
In Verderem's defense, he has said on this show numerous times, do not trust my picks when it comes to betting. And listen, we were all kind of unified in it. We all thought it was Belichick versus McDaniels. We've seen how bad the Raiders have been and how poor some of the coaching decisions have gone this year. So we won our teaser because we moved the Patriots up enough points, but we ended up losing with the Patriots on the money line. So still 3-2 week. We'll certainly take it as we continue on into week 16. And I don't know about you guys. I think there's more intriguing topics besides the actual games on the board. Obviously, Eagles and Cowboys is fascinating given where Jalen Hurts has basically completely changed the line, not just for this game, but in almost all of the markets as well. We've seen the 49ers NFC and Super Bowl odds move up as a result of the Jalen Hurts injury. We've seen the Eagles tick down a little bit. We've seen the line go from 1.5 Cowboys to 6.5 Cowboys. But I think the most interesting one to me is this massive drop-off in the MVP standings. You had Jalen Hurts entering this week as the consensus favorite to an MVP pretty much at every entire sports book. But since basically the betting markets had it first, where all of a sudden Mahomes took over, they flip-flopped. But then it started dropping and dropping and dropping. Jalen Hurts, you guys, went down all the way down to +700 at several different sports books, behind Josh Allen, behind Joe Burrow, and certainly behind Mahomes to win MVP. And they've since adjusted a little bit. But before I kind of get on my soapbox here, do you guys think that's justified? Say he misses the next 2 games, maybe even the rest of the season. Do you look at Jalen Hurts and say there's no way if he misses those games that he should be considered for MVP anymore?
I don't think I think dropping him that far is a little dramatic. I think that if all else was equal, everybody plays fine, then Hurts should still finish at worst second. You're telling me that even in the 15 weeks that he deserves MVP less than Josh Allen, who has had some very bad games, or even Joe Burrow, who really did not start the year very well and has gotten it going a little bit, but hard to make the case for MVP, especially the Bengals barely just took over the lead in their own division. I think that kind of steep drop is dramatic. And frankly, if Mahomes doesn't play well to extremely well, I think you could still make a solid case that Hurts should get the MVP, even missing the last 3 weeks of the year.
I think he's solid too. I think you're right. Everything you laid out, he should be second at no less than second, but it's Mahomes. As long as Mahomes doesn't come out and turn into Carson Wentz, it's going to be Mahomes. The counting numbers are gaudy. I mean, right? The counting numbers by the end of the season are going to be just absolutely insane for Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, the addition of his 17th game will help those numbers. But Mahomes has been outstanding. It was already between Mahomes and Jalen Hurts neck and neck going into, I guess, before the injury, right?
Right. It was still Hurts at minus 150. I think Mahomes was plus 130 entering the start of Monday morning.
Sure. But the point is, if you miss that many games, that matters to me. That even if the Eagles lose all those games and it showcases how important Jalen Hurts was to the team, you got to be healthy. You got to be there. The Eagles had a similar situation happen already with Carson Wentz a few years back when they won the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz was on pace for MVP, and then he got hurt, right? First off, we probably shouldn't freak out about the Eagles with the backup quarterback coming playoff time. If that were to happen, Nick Foles, Gardner Minshew, they're just shaking hands right now, same guy. But
yeah, like we're going from BDN to BDM, and there's going to be a very, very exciting time if you're looking at it just purely from a narrative standpoint. Like, let me give you my case in point for why I still believe that Hurts should be the favorite for MVP. And I'm curious to get your guys' take on this. And I'm going to be writing about this a little bit later over on at BetSided and FanSided. So first of all, you mentioned money on him. That's a good example. He did miss a little bit more time, but there were also larger considered candidates. I think he was certainly in the running, but Mahomes has put up the gaudy numbers, but I think there's still an argument to be made, especially knowing where he is. Even with those gaudy numbers, he was still behind Jalen Hurts. We'll get to that in a second. So there's 22 candidates in the history of the NFL that have won the MVP award playing 14 games or less. 8 of them have done it playing 12 games or less. And there have only been 2 candidates to do it since 2003. So recent sample size, it doesn't really exist, but it was Steve McNair and Marshall Faulk. Those were in 2000 and 2003. If we're asking the question of who's been most valuable to their team, if we're going into the week based off of Vegas odds, it was Jalen Hurts. There hadn't been any games played since between Monday and right now that we're having this conversation. So no team with relevant quarterbacks in the race played a game. Hurts is only moving down because of the fact that he could miss time. It still remains that he's questionable. It's a separated shoulder. I'd be very surprised if he does play against the Cowboys. Also, I'd be very surprised, frankly, if he does play the rest of the season, because the Eagles have a 3-game lead over Dallas. They don't need him to play. They're going to lock up the number 1 seed in the NFC. And I think that's part of the logic behind why he deserves it. Even if Hurts doesn't play another game, he showcased what it meant to be the most valuable player, because they, under Hurts, took that team to the highest possible level that you can get to in the regular season, which is going to be number 1 in the NFC, getting that first round bye, winning the division. None of that changes if Hurts misses the next 2 games. And then week 18 is a crapshoot anyway. And he probably wouldn't have played that game to begin with because the Eagles will have already have wrapped everything up. To me, nothing changes as a result of him missing the games other than the fact that he wasn't available and it was to no fault of his own. I don't buy the argument that because he's missing time, automatically just takes him completely out of the running for the MVP. And frankly, I think if you're going to consider a candidate, I think there's good value on Jalen Hurts right now because Mahomes, yeah, the numbers are great, but the odds in the market's already told you who is the most valuable player before this week. So unless Mahomes goes and takes it from him, which it's Mahomes, he's more than capable of being able to do so. I just don't think anything truly drastically changes. He already showed why he was the MVP. In the final 3 games of the season, to me, doesn't really matter in this argument.
So if you've listened to me at all, I've been very high on Jalen Hurts. I've been saying Jalen Hurts probably was just ahead of Patrick Mahomes. If he misses games, he's no longer ahead of Mahomes. And you mentioned the fact of, you actually used the argument that I've used for Mahomes just to bump him up, and you use it for Jalen Hurts. And I think you're wrong in that aspect. You said what happens with Jalen Hurts with he's gone. He's clearly the most valuable player to his team, right? He's not. The team surrounding Jalen Hurts is way better than the supporting cast in Kansas City. It's not even close. You take Jalen Hurts away, how many games do the Eagles win this season? Average quarterback. I'm just saying.
Replacement level quarterback?
I guess.
I mean, they're not ahead of Dallas.
They'll say 9 wins. You take Mahomes away and put an average quarterback on the Chiefs. How many wins do they have?
They're probably behind. I'd say they're behind the Chargers, but it's the Chargers, so you never really know. That's totally fair, but I think you can make the argument that from the players that Mahomes is actually playing with on the offensive side of the ball is equal, if not better, than what Philadelphia has. I think that's a fair argument.
No. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They're better than Juju and MVS. Come on.
Yeah, but
Kelsey's better than Goddard. Come on, I'll grant you that one. Offensive line, the Eagles have the best offensive line in the NFL.
They do, but I think the
running backs
offensive line is they've gotten a bad rep the last 2-3 weeks. Overall sample of the entirety of the year, I don't think is reasonable. I think that the narrative around the Chiefs' offensive line the last few weeks is where a lot of folks are going with it. They've been a very good offensive line throughout the entirety of the season.
Yeah, I just disagree in that aspect. Again, I don't think it's fair to hurt Jalen Hurts for the strength of schedule. I don't think it's necessarily fair to knock him because he has better weapons. I think that the knock against Mahomes when he had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, I thought was unfair. So I think it's unfair to take that away from Jalen Hurts. But just that argument you made, I think it's fair to say, I don't know, man. I think that Mahomes has had multiple times this season where it was over my dead body. There's been multiple times this season where Mahomes has been the reason the Chiefs have won. You can point to a certain moment and say, yeah, that's Mahomes. I don't know if we've seen that with Jalen Hurts.
You saw it last week. He accounted for all of the Eagles' touchdowns through the ground. Like, he was the sole reason that they won. And yes, like I see a lot of comments. Lucas is weighing in. The Eagles have Pro Football Focus's top rated pass blocking offensive line. Chiefs are at number 12. Yes, like there's better weapons on the Eagles than on the Chiefs collectively. I will give you that argument. I think that's a fair argument. I'm telling you that into this week, the betting odds were indicating that all things relative to that, like taking all that into consideration, Hurts was the MVP. So it doesn't change as a result of him not playing anymore. That's my point, is that everything, we were already discussing all these things anyway, and he was still the betting favorite. And now knowing that the Eagles are still going to get the number 1 seed, they're still going to be the winners of the NFC East division, that doesn't change as a result of it.
What do you have, Liam?
I think that this is kind of boils down to the most valuable player versus the best player argument. Again, I think that Hurts is more valuable to the Eagles, frankly, because I think that, Sterling, you're underselling perhaps Andy Reid's skill as an offensive head coach, because the Chiefs did, do good things with an average quarterback not that long ago. It was only 5 years ago that Alex Smith was back there and he had Tyreek and Kelce, but they weren't, maybe not the fully realized versions of themselves yet. But the best player is available for every game and shows out every game. And that is what Mahomes is going to end up being. And so then the vote usually ends up going to the best player rather than, technically speaking, the most valuable. It's also interesting that, to Ben's point, I mean, the betting odds were equal going into the week, and I'm interested to see how they change, because if the Eagles look completely lost, does that make Hurts a more valuable player? I think that it, through a certain lens, through the lens that we're looking at it now about the supporting cast, if the Eagles fall apart these last 3 weeks, then Hurts is more valuable to his team than Mahomes. It's a very interesting conversation. You two feel very passionately about it, and I think these last 3 weeks will tell us a lot about it.
Well, what's funny is I was actually on Hurts' side before the injury. I was team Hurts is probably going to win it. I do think the record matters. I do think to an extent that does make a difference. Again, I didn't want to knock him for having A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith because I hated when that was used against Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
I do think to an extent, too, we're probably not talking. Sean mentioned the 13 rushing touchdowns. That's huge. That's huge. And the ability to run on the ground, that's outstanding. But I do think you have to be healthy. I do think missing games takes a massive knock against the MVP candidacy. You have to be available. Unless you're literally sitting out the last game of the season because you've already locked it up. If you miss 2 or 3 games and Mahomes is still doing what he's doing, I just don't see Jalen Hurts winning.
By the way, our guy Sean weighs in saying best ability is availability. Yes, to a certain extent. But again, what's done and what's been accomplished over the course of the season has already been accomplished, and we've seen what the Eagles have been able to do also in the best division in football this year. Like that's not, and it's not a back and forth argument. Like, yes, believe it or not, I take that back. Maybe it's the AFC East. You could have a competitive argument with the NFC East this year, AFC and NFC East. It's certainly not the AFC West. As far as divisions and the level of competition that you're playing. But also, in the interest of full transparency, I know that we got some games and some picks to talk about. I always think it's important to admit your biases on the front end. I do have a Jalen Hurts 18-1 MVP ticket.
I said that.
But I think the arguments hold up, but I also think it's important to admit where your biases lie. So yes, I am advocating. It's maybe not necessarily a journalistic integrity that I'm going with here. It's more of a lobbying effort with the interest of putting all of your biases on the table. So say that in that sense. But I do want to get your guys' perspective on that game. It's been a crazy line movement for the Eagles and for the Cowboys. So it started off as the Cowboys -1.5. It's gone up a full 5 points towards the Cowboys side, anywhere between 5.5 to 6.5, depending on where you guys look and where you place your bets, with a total of 46. I jumped on the Cowboys once I started to see that line start to move. I wanted to get them before it hit 3. So I'm on them at -2.5. However, the fact that it's all the way up to nearly a touchdown, given what we've just had the conversations about, there's still plenty of weapons on this Eagles team. We've also seen a Cowboys team the last couple of weeks fall apart. You guys have talked about it over the course of the show, whether or not there's concern about Dak Prescott, whether or not the Cowboys defense that was once elite has had major struggles over the last few weeks. I can't help but wonder if we're given too many points here to a Cowboys team that really hasn't done much over the last few weeks to deserve being almost a full touchdown favorite, even if Jalen Hurts is out. Like I kind of look at it collectively and say, I don't think the Eagles are going to win, but if you can give me +6.5, where they're rallying around Gardner Minshew and using the rest of their skill set against a team that I believe is better than Dallas, I kind of look at this line and say, all right, I think I got to take the points here in a divisional game on the road, where these games tend to be a little bit close anyway. I think it's too many points right now for Dallas. I think I'm going to lean on the Eagles side, maybe try to middle this game a little bit.
I like that, man. I would for sure take the Eagles with the points. They'll be fine with Gardner Minshew. The weapons are there. And also Dak Prescott, I mentioned, he's been very careless with the ball. You're telling me Darius Slay's not going to pick him off? I believe it. I believe that. You think they'll be able to run the football effectively against the, in my opinion, really, really solid front seven of the Eagles? Zeke's going to have some tough sledding. Tony Pollard will probably be a little better because the athleticism, the quickness. But Zeke's going to struggle. I think that the points with the Eagles is the move here.
Through every football sense, you guys are right, but I will present to you an alternative viewpoint. The Cowboys are at home. They are going to be playing pissed off because they didn't feel like they got a fair shot at the Eagles last time because they started Cooper Rush. They're going to be pissed off because everybody's talking about how they ain't actually all that good. They're going to be pissed off because they gave up a 14-point lead to the Jaguars and lost the game on a tipped pick 6. And this is a divisional rivalry, one of the best in the NFL. Anecdotally, just like feeling it, it feels like the Cowboys are going to come out firing. And it feels like, and we've seen in the last 2 months, they have had some wild offensive explosions that is partially due to the electricity of their skilled players like Tony Pollard, partially just due to crazy luck and bounces and things of that nature. But it feels like if the stars were to align in a non-logical sense, it feels like the stars are aligning for the Cowboys right now.
I think that's an interesting call, Liam, because there's been aspects, especially about what the Cowboys do on offense through the run game, that we've seen the Eagles struggle with consistently all year. That's been a major issue for it. You saw it in the game against Chicago, and credit to the Bears for keeping that one much closer than it likely deserved to be. But you saw the explosive playmaking from Justin Fields in that game. A touchdown was taken off the board for him because he stepped out of bounds. But that was a remarkable run. David Montgomery had a big game against them. So they do have issues, Philadelphia, when it comes to stopping the run. They have throughout the bulk of the season. I expect them to win, but you're telling me 6.5 points against the most consistent team in football all season long. That just feels like a lot of points to me. And so that's why I feel like I need to go with Philadelphia, especially if this line goes all the way up to 7. That's a no-brainer pick for me, especially in today's NFL.
I will say also, Ben, with the Bears, masterful tank job all season long. Keeping games close. They give fans something to get excited about, but what happens? Oh, they find a way to lose? Oh, it's just a masterful tank job for a better draft pick in Chicago. Good for them. Good for you.
No, they've started to figure it out. They've played well on these bye weeks or mini bye weeks. I mean, if you're really trying to sell it, how about Houston the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
You really go all the way to the end. Overtime against Kansas City at home. Previous week, you take the Cowboys into the final 2 minutes. Both of these two teams that are trying to suck as bad as they can for one of those top overall picks. It's Houston's basically to lose, but they certainly made it interesting. All right, you guys ready to go into some betting plays for the week?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So again, for Liam, I know that you're filling in for Verderame here. So a little bit of gist as to sort of how we kind of go through these. These are already bets that I have made heading into the show. The lines may have changed from where they currently stand. I'll keep you posted on where they are now. But we give credit for making the actual selection. These are all tracked, of course, at BetSided and at BetStamp, so on and so forth. Let's start with the aforementioned Chicago Bears. They covered at home last week. I do not expect them to cover again. It's a good Buffalo team that's had a little bit more rest. They were catching 8. That's where I got them. They're now currently 8.5 to 9. Remember, this is a Bears team that will go back and forth with you for a little bit on the offensive side, but they're hurt. They're beat up defensively. And remember, this is a team trying to lose, whereas Buffalo is trying to win. And when they win, they have the largest margin of victory in the NFL. So Bills -8, first one on the board. We going yay or nay for the show?
Oh, big yay. I'm
Big
with
yay.
you. Yeah.
Okay. Bills -8 on the board. We mentioned the Cowboys. Took them at -2.5. But I say let's go ahead and add a second pick to the show because we just talked about it here. I know Liam is going against it, but certainly you're the deciding vote. We'll have Cowboys -2.5 on the board because it's already been bet. I have not bet the Eagles +6.5 yet. Do we want to go ahead and put that as a show bet as well?
I would love to, Ben.
Okay.
But by the way, do you think it would potentially go up to 7? In your betting expertise, any chance of it going up to 7?
Maybe. And the only reason that I say that is because as the public comes in this week and they know that Jalen Hurts, hey, here's what I'll say. The answer is yes if Hurts is ruled out. I will say the public bets it up to 7 in that circumstance. So do we wait and say let's keep it off the board, or we roll the dice with it now?
I still think 6.5 is too much. Let's go with a 6.5. But if it gets to 7, I'm going to probably just be very irritated with myself as the Eagles lose by 7.
Okay. Yes, very much in play. All right, so we're going to take both of those plays. We're going to take the Cowboys -2.5 because that's already been bet, and we're also going to try to middle with the Eagles at +6.5. Okay, the Monday Stacking the Box best bet that I sent to Verderame that was published Monday morning. Hopefully you guys all read the column. The Pittsburgh Steelers at home in the 50th anniversary game of the Immaculate Reception. Got them at -1.5. They're currently a 3-point favorite at home against the Raiders. The Raiders got all their luck out of the way last week. Let's go ahead and take a Steelers team that's playing much better as of late on defense. Don't know whether or not it'll be Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky, but I think it's kind of irrelevant either way. I think the quarterback is not really the story of that game. It's the playmakers around him and a defense that's playing substantially better since TJ Watt came into play. Raiders are atrocious on the road. They have been all season long. It's Mike Tomlin versus Josh McDaniels. I know that he beat Belichick last week, but I have a very difficult time not backing Tomlin in this spot, especially in a primetime game. Steelers -1.5. I would still bet this up to -2.5 if you can still find it.
I'll go with you. This is your best bet. And what's the rule that I now have? Don't go with your gut, Sterling. Go with Ben's. So I'm rolling with you, Ben.
All right. Liam, you on board?
Oh, yeah. I mean, how can you possibly bet the Raiders? The last week was a miracle, like you said. The Steelers have been really, well, maybe not really good, but they've been better the last few weeks. I think Najee Harris kind of finding his stride a little bit, and Deontay Johnson deciding to catch the football have been tremendous developments on both sides of the ball. And it's going to be, I mean, you're taking Mike Tomlin in December over Josh McDaniels. That's maybe the easiest bet of the week. Come on.
All right. By the way, we saw Tyler Higbee catch his first touchdown of the NFL season on Monday night after being like one of the most targeted tight ends in the league. Deontay Johnson still has not scored a touchdown this year. Have to wonder, especially in this matchup, if he might be a key guy to consider an anytime touchdown score bet on, because it'll probably be like right around 3-1 or maybe even higher, even against the bad Raiders team. So something to consider for a little bit later on this week. Another one that we got early in the week and we were on the right side of, Tampa Bay. Sure, they have not done much to warrant consideration, especially being the worst covering team in the NFL, but oddsmakers and the sharps believe that they are a very good bet. They are on the road this week against Arizona, who has been one of the worst home teams in the Cliff Kingsbury era. Granted, Kingsbury has been better as an underdog over his career, but the line has moved guys from 3.5 to 6.5. That might be a little bit too much for my blood, but I do like Tampa Bay at -3.5. That game has already been bet. Are we including it in the show bet?
6.5 is a lot.
Oh,
he's
no.
got a 3.5 though.
We get him at -3.5.
Right.
The bet has been made on behalf of the show and also my personal bank account. Also on behalf of the show. I would not take Tampa Bay at -6.5, but I would certainly take them at 3.5, 4, even 4.5.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals lost to the Broncos last week. Like, for however bad the Bucs have been, it's really hard to lose to the Broncos, and they started Brett Ripon. I mean, come on, man. It's the Cardinals. No matter how bad Tom Brady has been, no matter how bad the Bucs have been, no matter how big of an idiot Todd Bowles appears to be on a week-to-week basis, they're not losing, and they are definitely not winning by fewer than that many points against these Cardinals. And also, Cliff Kingsbury is atrocious at the end of the season. Everybody knows it. He's lost 5 of his last 7 games in 2021, 5 of his last 6 in 2020. This is a no-brainer. No-brainer.
All right. You convinced me. Good job, right. Liam.
Very good. All right. And then the last one, for anybody that's watching going, hey, not helpful at all, guys. You're already taking a bunch of lines that have already moved. I have a line that is still available at pretty much every sports book. If you want to do it, it's a 2-team teaser. where you take the New York Jets. They're +1.5 right now on FanDuel. Interestingly enough, FanDuel is the only book right now that you can find them as an underdog. They're actually -1 pretty much everywhere else around the country. So you tease the Jets from +1.5 to +7.5, kind of like what we did with the Patriots last week. So you move the line, make them more than a touchdown underdog, and tease them with the aforementioned Tampa Bay Buccaneers, move them from -6.5 to basically a pick 'em. They just can't tie. Bucks win by 1 or more. Jets have to lose by 8 points, or excuse me, they have to cover the 7.5 point spread. You get them plus the points. So Jets +7.5, Bucks basically as a pick 'em -0.5 as our teaser with actual lines that you can use that week. Are we in?
I feel way more comfortable with this one.
Okay.
I feel way more comfortable with this one. I like this one.
Yeah, the Jags aren't going to drop 40 on this Jets defense. Nobody should believe in Zach Wilson, but he only, he didn't make completely game-changing mistakes against the Lions last week. I think short week favors defense. I like that. I like the Jets to cover, and then Bucks pick 'em. I already expressed my thoughts on that. So
yeah, and Trevor Lawrence, by the way, has only 2 straight-up victories on the road in his entire career. Now, you basically can throw out the first year because it was Urban Meyer coaching and not Doug Pederson, but it's still worth mentioning that road struggles for Lawrence have been there relatively consistently throughout the course of his career. And you're talking about a Jets team that played at home on Sunday, gets to stay at home. Trends have favored short home favorites in these spots for the last several Thursday night games. So we got a nice slate, boys. We got plenty to be able to choose from, and let's hope that we continue to build on this 31-19-1 record that we got on the show.
Oh, it's going to be great. And by the way, it's going to be a Disney movie. Zach Wilson, we know what's going to happen. That guy is totally a character from like a 2009 Disney movie. He's going to all of a sudden have his struggles, gets benched, comes back. Not a great comeback, but this game, we're going to see Zach Wilson make a Disney movie. I'm with you, Ben.
Dude, Zach Wilson is the villain in the Disney movies. What are you talking about? He's like,
I agree.
Oh, you think he's the villain?
Okay. Oh, 100%. Come on.
And it also can't be a Disney movie given his relationships with with other guys' moms.
Well,
that's true. That might get a little dicey for the property.
It's a new age Disney movie. Come on now. Come on, it's new age.
Disney plus.
On Skinamax.
Right. I feel like there's no better way for us to end the segment.
Yeah, yes. All right, I'll do the Verderame. All right, Ben. So what the hell's going on here?
We got plenty over at BetSided. Also, you might have noticed that some more of our articles have been coming out on FanSided lately. That's been really exciting for us to be able to get a little bit more betting plays out on that platform as well. Reed Wallach put out his best bets for today's college football slates and the bowl games. We'll have betting previews for every team and every matchup this week in the NFL. NBA, Peter Dewey continues to have a terrific season on the NHL side. Same thing with Ian McMillan. Continuing to try and get you some winning plays and have some fun in the process. Fansided.com/BetSided is where you can find us.
Follow Ben Heisler on Twitter at Benny Heis. By the way, it was great seeing you in person last weekend. Was that or 2 weekends ago? Whenever that was.
I know. Feels like a long time. Like I said, I know that Fansided is doing some cool stuff to wrap up the year. And I've only been with this company for a year and a half or so with Minute Media, but definitely a highlight to be around a lot of coworkers that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, especially with you and Verderame and Patrick and Hunter and all those guys. And not only just to hang out and watch some Chiefs games, but to see a packed sports bar, packed Tanner's Bar and Grill, filled to the brim with people wearing Arrowhead Addict shirts and all rooting together to basically all support the show. That's special. Like, that's built trust over time. That's a community, man. And that was really, really cool to see and to be a part of. So yeah, love the opportunity to hang out. Love the opportunity to catch up, have a couple beers and watch some Chiefs. And hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Of course, man. Talk to you next week.
All right, fellas. Be good. Happy holidays.
Ben Heisler. Make sure you follow him, because if you want to win some money, listen to him, not me or Verderame. I don't know about you, Liam. I've not gotten a read yet if you're good at betting or not.
I make picks every week with my boss, Kyle Costa, over at thebiglead.com. Our record is slightly below 500 for the year. So maybe.
So bet against you. So bet against you.
Bet against me. Maybe don't listen to me. I still feel very confident about that Bucs Cardinals pick, but definitely Ben has my number. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, Liam, before we get out of here, what's going on with you?
BigLead.com has everything you need to know about sports media. Hope you guys want to check it out. We just released our Sports Media Awards, where we gave out awards for the year of greatness in sports media to various personalities, individuals, networks, and studio shows. Very happy with how it came out. Would love for you guys to check it out. And, as the holidays grow near, the Big League gets a little weirder. So if you want some goofy content, please visit our website.
Well, Liam, this was a lot of fun. Verderame should be back next week. So, yes, you guys will be able to tune in next week as Verderame rips on me. Hopefully, we come back with good bets between Liam, Ben, and myself, so that way we can rub it, at least in Verderame's face, just a little bit. This was Stacking the Box podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you to Liam. Thanks for everyone back there behind the scenes. Thanks to Verderame for allowing us to have this time to continuously do Stacking the Box. Until next week. We are out.